Hey there, night owls and thrill seekers. Welcome to Midnight Surge, where the shadows whisper and the dark holds secrets you can't unhear. If you're into this kind of chill, hit that subscribe button down below. Join the crew who never sleep easy. And let's dive into the dark together. Ready? Here's tonight's story. I haven't told many people this story. Even now, I hesitate. Not because I'm afraid you won't believe me, but because I'm afraid you will. It was late January, 4 years ago, give or take. I was living just outside of Wethersfield, New York. A quiet, nothing happens kind of place, where snow piles higher than your knees, and the cold seeps into your bones by mid-November. Back then, I was working as a delivery driver for an auto parts distributor. Not glamorous, but it paid well enough, and I liked the solitude. No one really bothers you when you're just dropping off brake pads and alternators to dusty garages and backlot shops. That day had run longer than it should have. We got slammed with last-minute orders, and my manager asked if I could cover a route out toward Warsaw, then swing back down the long way to hit a farm shop and arcade. That long way meant the backroads, thin, winding, and mostly unplowed after dark. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I said yes. The snow had started around 4 p.m., big, heavy flakes that didn't swirl so much as drop. By the time I finished the last drop-off, it was just past 7, and the daylight was gone. I remember turning onto Old Shale Road, that narrow stretch that cuts between pine forests and empty pasture land. It was one of those roads that barely exists on GPS, more like a suggestion than a route. I'd driven it before, but never in weather like that. I turned the heater up and rolled my shoulders, trying to shake the fatigue. The snow was coming down harder now. The headlights didn't help much. They just illuminated the blizzard in front of me, like I was driving into static. At first, it was just the quiet that unsettled me. You get used to a certain rhythm on the road. Radio, engine hum, the occasional crunch when your tires hit something beneath the snow. But out there, it was like the world had muted itself. No radio reception, no other cars. Just the crunch of tires and the dull whine of wind against the frame. I don't know when I noticed it exactly, but it was sometime after I passed that rusted-out mailbox with the number peeling off. There was something off about the snowbanks. They were too high, like unnaturally high. I remember thinking a plow must have pushed them up earlier, but then I realized there hadn't been any plows. Not a single tire track but mine. I slowed down a little, leaned forward over the wheel, squinting at the road ahead. That's when I saw it, just for a second. So fast I almost missed it. A flicker of movement at the edge of the woods, where the trees pressed in tight against the road. It looked like someone stepping back between the trees. Not running, not hiding, just stepping away, like they'd been standing there, watching. I told myself it was nothing, a deer, a trick of the light. My eyes playing games because I was tired. I didn't stop the car. I'm not that kind of person. But I turned the high beams on and kept going. Slower now. Heart starting to pound even though nothing had happened. Then I saw something else. A small figure crouched down near the tree line maybe 30 feet ahead. It looked like a kid. Small jacket, knit cap. Just sitting there almost like they were waiting for something. I braked. Hard. The car slid a little before stopping. My heart was in my throat. They didn't move. Just sat there in the snow, knees pulled to their chest. I didn't get out right away. I just sat there, gripping the wheel, mind racing. What the hell was a kid doing out here? No houses around, no lights, nothing but snow and trees. And that silence, that oppressive, heavy silence. Finally, I rolled the window down, just a crack. "Hey," I called out. My voice sounded thin, swallowed by the snow. Are you okay? Are you lost? The kid didn't respond. Didn't even look at me. I should have left. I should have rolled up the window and just called the cops from the first gas station I found. But something made me open the door. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear dressed up as responsibility. I stepped out into the snow. The cold hit me like a wall. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. I didn't bother with my flashlight. My headlights were enough. I took one step toward the kid. That's when they stood up. They stood up slowly. No jerky movements. No panic, just stood. Like they'd been expecting me. I remember thinking they were too still, too calm. A kid out in the woods alone in a snowstorm at night. Should have been scared. Should have at least looked at me, but they didn't. They turned, just a little. Like they were going to walk away from the road and deeper into the trees. Hey! Wait, hang on, I said, louder now. My boots crunched in the snow as I moved forward just a few steps. I didn't want to get too far from the car. I still had my phone in my hand, but there was no signal, not even a single bar. The kid paused, still didn't turn to face me, just stood there, back to me now, maybe 10 feet into the tree line. That's when I noticed the tracks. There were no footprints around them. None. Not behind them, not to the side. Just flat snow, undisturbed, smooth, like they'd been placed there. Dropped, maybe. My chest tightened, breath catching in my throat. I took one step back. Something about the quiet snapped into focus again, like my brain had gone fuzzy and was now catching up. I didn't say another word. I turned around and walked back to the car. Fast. Just enough to feel like if I didn't move quickly, I wouldn't be able to move at all. I got in, shut the door, locked it out of reflex. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. For a second, the headlights dimmed and then came back up. And in that flicker, in that moment between darkness and light, I thought I saw something else. Someone else. Standing farther back in the woods, just behind the kid. Could have been a trick of the trees. Could have been my imagination. Could have been something worse. I pulled away without looking back. The tires spun for a second before gripping. The snow had gotten heavier in just the few minutes I'd been out there. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. The rest of the drive home felt like a dream, or a blackout. I don't remember the roads, don't remember passing any signs or landmarks. Just that crushing feeling in my chest and the sound of my own breath. I didn't even notice the heater wasn't working until I got back to my apartment and couldn't stop shivering. I just kept going over it in my head. The silence, the kid, the missing footprints. That second figure, if it was a figure. I thought about calling someone, maybe the police. But what would I say? I saw a kid in the woods who didn't leave footprints, and maybe someone else. But I didn't check, and I left them there. I sounded crazy even to myself. I told my buddy Wes a few days later. He's one of those guys who works on snowmobiles and always has a theory about something. When I told him where it happened, "You ever hear about that bus crash?" he asked. "What bus crash?" "Back in the late 80s, I think. School bus ran off that road during a storm. Half the kids died. Most of them were never recovered. It's a local thing. Old-timers still talk about hearing voices out there. Laughter sometimes, crying too. But the weirdest ones. They say the kids don't leave tracks." He said it like he was half joking, but I saw the way he looked at me, like he was trying to gauge how much I'd seen. I didn't laugh. Couldn't. I've avoided that road ever since. I even asked for a different delivery route. Didn't tell my manager why. I just said I was tired of driving in the snow. I used to manage closing shifts at a small chain pharmacy in upstate New York. Suburbs, not quite rural. But once the sun dipped behind the hills in winter, it might as well have been the edge of the world. I'd usually clock out by 9:15, maybe 9:30 if we were backed up. My name's Marissa. I was 29 then. Quiet, practical, mostly kept to myself. Lived alone in a rental with thin walls and heating that wheezed more than it worked. There's something about winter that makes everything feel a little more permanent. Like whatever happens in the cold is harder to undo. This happened in January 2020. I remember that because it was the week after my coworker Greg got fired for stealing muscle relaxers. The air in the store had been weird ever since. Everyone was tense, pretending things were normal. I was the last one out that night. Lisa, the pharmacist, had left early to beat the flurries. Said something about needing to pick up her daughter, so it was just me. Turning off the humming fluorescents, locking the till, the usual end-of-shift stuff. The snow had picked up while I was inside. One of those fine, quiet snows that adds up before you even notice. I remember it was so still, like the whole parking lot was holding its breath. I walked out to my car, a silver Civic I'd had since college, and realized I forgot my scraper. Typical. The windshield was buried under a soft crust already. I was brushing it off with my sleeve when I noticed a car idling a few spaces over. Older Ford Explorer, I think. Beige or gold. You know the kind. Didn't think much of it. Probably someone waiting for a pickup. But it was strange. There were no other stores in the strip still open. I got in my car, locked the doors, started the engine, turned the heat up. That's when the headlights clicked on behind me, like they were waiting for me to be ready. I took a longer route home that night. That's what I tell myself anyway. Maybe I was trying to shake the feeling. Maybe I didn't want to admit I was afraid. The snow was getting heavier by the minute, and visibility was down to half a block. The streets were quiet. No plows yet, just tire grooves filling with slush. I kept checking the rear view. The Explorer was behind me. Not too close. Not far enough either. Every turn I made, it made two. Right on Bennett, left on Hawthorne, even when I took that dumb detour through Ridgeway, the one with the slow curves past the empty elementary school. I told myself, coincidence. Suburbs aren't big. People take the same roads. But I felt it in my jaw, in my chest. That stiffness that tells you you're not just being paranoid. At the stoplight by the old post office, I tried something. I turned right, which would take me in a loop, not toward home. The light had just changed. No reason for anyone else to follow. He turned right, too. I whispered, "Okay," like I'd just lost a bet. My hands were shaking. I passed the Shell station. It was closed, lights out. I thought about pulling in. But what? Sit there? Run? I didn't want to test him. I didn't want to see what happened if I stopped. I made it back onto the main road, heading toward my neighborhood. 2 more turns and I'd be on my street. That voice in my head, the one that usually talks me down, was completely silent. The Explorer was still there, far enough back that I couldn't make out the driver's face. No lights inside, just that steady trail of headlights. Like a shadow that wouldn't disappear. I didn't pull into my driveway. I couldn't. It was a narrow single lane with a wooden fence and no streetlights. If I went in and he followed, that was it. I'd be boxed in. I'd have nowhere to go. No one nearby. My nearest neighbor was gone for the week. I was feeding their cat. So I passed my house, kept driving. My thoughts weren't even thoughts at that point. Just fragments. What do you want? Why me? I ended up turning down Ashton Road. Locals don't use it much. It's technically still public, but it's barely plowed. Just a gravel trail with one abandoned farmhouse at the end. People say kids used to throw parties there back in the day, but it's been boarded up for years. I thought, maybe I can double back. Lose him. Maybe there's enough space to turn around. The road was worse than I remembered. Narrow, pitted, lined with sagging trees. My headlights barely cut through the snowfall, but I kept going, and at some point, I realized the Explorer had disappeared. I pulled over, heart pounding in my ears. Did I lose him? Did he turn off? Did I imagine the whole thing? The second I let myself exhale, I saw them again. Headlights, at the curve. No rush, just approaching. He hadn't turned off. He'd just given me enough distance to think I was safe. I hit the gas. The Civic fishtailed once but held. I barreled toward the farmhouse. No plan, no sense. I just knew I needed space. Options. Somewhere he wasn't. When I reached the clearing, I turned off the engine breath fogging the windshield, gripping the keys like they could save me. The Explorer's lights never reached the clearing. They stopped at the curve and just turned off. I waited. I don't know how long. 10 minutes. 20. Snow kept falling, soft and steady, muffling everything. I could hear my own breath louder than the outside world. The Explorer just sat there, no movement, no engine sound, just dark. I thought about calling someone, but I didn't even know what I'd say. Hey, there's a car that's been following me, but I don't have a plate, and I drove into the woods voluntarily, and now I'm hiding near a condemned house like an idiot. No signal anyway? Of course not. Not out here. At some point, the lights turned back on. They didn't come forward, just stayed there, lighting the trees like a stage. Then the door opened. I didn't see his face. He didn't move toward me. Just stood there, watching. Waiting? I couldn't tell. Eventually, he got back in. The lights went off. The engine roared and the tires spun as the Explorer turned and backed away. He left. I waited another half hour before I drove home. Parked on the street, ran inside. Didn't sleep. Never told the police. Didn't have anything useful to give them. No plates, no ID, just a feeling that lodged itself so deep in me it still flinches when I drive home late. Some nights, when the snow is falling just right, and the roads are too quiet, I check the rear view more than I need to. I always keep the tank above half now. Always take the well-lit streets. And I never, ever drive past my house if something feels wrong. Because the scariest part wasn't that he followed me. It's that he could have done more, and didn't. Like maybe he was waiting for a better night, or a worse one.
If these stories sent a chill down your spine, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe for more eerie tales. What would you do if you were caught in one of these unsettling situations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what's on your mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.